Tonight, about 3,500 homes across the state don't have power.
That cold front that whipped through last night brought pelting rain and gusty winds, and it took down trees and power lines. Central Maine Power says its crews worked through the night to get the lights back on for about 55,000 people by 7 o'clock this morning.
And CMP is now at the center of two major debates on what the future of Maine utilities will look like. A court decision is breathing new life into its plans to build a power transmission line through the state and into Massachusetts. But at the same time, a push to replace the company with a customer-owned utility is gaining steam.
NECN's Dustin Vladkowski breaks down the arguments on both sides and what comes next for the state.
This week, two major developments tied to the future of electricity in New England, both happening in Maine. Wednesday, state officials certified signatures for a ballot question that could replace Maine's electric utilities with one owned by consumers, potentially putting that in front of voters next year. A day earlier, Maine's Supreme Court handed a victory to developers of New England Clean Energy Connect. That's the controversial billion-dollar utility corridor that would bring Canadian hydropower through Maine to Massachusetts. Tuesday, the state's top court said it was legal for the state of Maine to lease roughly 30 acres of land for the line's construction. Project developers calling that a step in the right direction for renewable energy in Maine, reiterating their stance that it could lower energy prices, something they have said could happen across New England if cheaper hydropower was competing with fuels for electricity generation like natural gas. Project opponents condemning the ruling, saying they're extremely disappointed that the project provides little to no benefit to Maine consumers. All this underscoring the heated debate over the corridor that around 60% of Maine voters rejected with a ballot question last year. That vote itself, the center of a remaining legal question as courts examine whether or not it was constitutional. Add to that Wednesday's news.
I'm thrilled that all the efforts of hundreds of volunteers across the state have come to fruition.
Mainers could end up voting on whether or not to form a consumer-owned utility next year with enough signatures certified for a ballot question. That idea, which could phase out Maine's private electric companies, has various opponents too who cite cost and uncertainty. But a group called Our Power says a consumer-owned option may mean lower prices and more accountability for Mainers.
We think that we can do better.
As for how the corridor and its regional climate and consumer cost impacts fit into that debate,
Our Power doesn't have an official position on the CMP corridor. The CMP corridor is actually a separate entity, and so we would get to decide if that's something that we wanted to acquire or not. If it was ultimately built.
More high-voltage legal and political questions yet to be answered. In Portland, Dustin Vladkowski, NECN.